Joining us is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny to go over this development and several others, but a frightening flight forward, in my view. Doc, why do you think that, I've never seen such a push to force more and more vaccines, but also Gardasil and the hoax of Perry 4 years ago to say it's the law. Fresh off that collapse and becoming a national issue, they're launching even bigger hoaxes now.
The depopulation agenda is becoming more and more apparent. They have to know. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They have to know. I mean, teen pregnancy is down. It's down. Was up from 2005 to 2006. It had increased by 2000 in that period by 3%. And now they're saying that the data that we have is from 2009, saying it was the lowest ever. Now, some of it may be that kids are having more abortions. Some of it may be that they are listening to those pregnant mom television shows and things on Skype. So, but I believe that the polysorbate 80 and the borax and the Gardasil vaccine, which was released in this country in 2006 for little girls, and now, as you said, Alex, we're going to give it to those dirty little boys. If I were going to go to medical school, if I were starting in medical school now and starting all over again, I would specialize in either OB-GYN or in genetics, because I believe that by the time you would get out of medical school and done your residency program and got into practice, that would, given another 5 to 10 years, that the infertility in this country is going to be rampant. And I believe that there's going to be an enormous number of people who are both men and women who are going to have issues with infertility, and nobody's going to say, oh, well, it was that Gardasil vaccine you had when you were 12.
Well, I mean, earlier, we've got Rockefeller Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UN statements. The UN's been caught doing this before, and you see a global push with governments going and even giving billions of dollars to countries like Mexico and saying it's free. It cost $500+ here for the 3 shots to vaccinate every girl and now every boy in Mexico. And they're saying it's going to be forced in Mexico, just like they tried to say it's forced here. I mean, right there shows the fraud of this and the way they don't care. They don't care how many people die in trials. They don't care how many people get warts all over their bodies or autoimmune disorders. And can you speak to now Gardasil HPV vaccine found contaminated with recombinant DNA? They had a firm tested, as you know, a few weeks ago. SaneVax broke this down, that it's not exactly what they told us was really in there, Doctor.
Well, they talk about that the recombinant HPV virus is truly listed by the CDC and by I believe it's the FDA, has listed it as a known biohazard and biocontaminant. And when you read the package insert from when the Gardasil vaccine first came out, it said that there was no live virus and no recombinant virus that was present in the vaccine at all, which was an absolute lie. And I'm hoping that there's some smart attorney out there who will go after the pharmaceutical industry and take them to task for that. It's just like the report that came out yesterday, that it was a 40-year meta-analysis looking back at all of the stories that had ever been done about in all the research that had ever been done on the flu shot. They said that, well, it really doesn't work in the elderly, and oh, by the way, we don't think it works in anybody else either. That's just one more confirmatory story, Alex, from when the Cochrane collaboration came out with the same data and said the same things in 2005, 2006, and I believe 2009, where they said the same thing. I believe that there is a RICO violation here or something like that. I'm not an attorney.
No, it is organized crime that they send their lobbyists in to not just lobby, but to get into government positions in the revolving door. They know it's a fraud. They know it's tens of millions of dollars a year. And as you just said, you said this a decade ago from the numbers. It's been well known, even the Canadian studies 3 years ago with the H1N1, and I want you to speak to this. They admitted it doubled your chances of getting the regular, getting the regular seasonal flu if you took the H1N1, and didn't even protect you. And here's the report out of CTV of Canada again. CNN's also been forced to report it. Since you're mentioning, I just want to back you up. But they're spinning it. Flu vaccine less effective than once thought, report shows. I actually read through this, and it just admits that it's totally ineffective. As you always said, they're always giving you last year or the year before's flu, never having an effect the next year. But if you add the numbers of how it reduces your own immunity, it's probably actually makes it net worse.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that, think about how many dollars are spent every year, Medicare dollars, which is your and my tax dollars, going into the Medicare fund, and that we are injecting the elderly and the big push through all the CVS pharmacies and Walgreens and all these other places and doctors' offices who say that you've got to get your flu shot, and it's all covered by Medicare, which is what is Medicare? Our tax dollars. So we are forcing injections on seniors that don't work and that could make them very sick and could probably kill some of them. By the CDC's own admission, they say there's between 70 and 80 cases of Guillain-Barré a year, some of which are caused by the flu vaccine. And we know that that costs tens of thousands, probably millions of dollars if people have Guillain-Barré and they're in the hospital for several weeks to several months until they get off of the respirator and they have to learn to walk and talk all over again.
All right, let me stop you again. You're being very conservative here. I know two people in the media in Austin who called me and apologized. One of them is Dale Dudley of 93.7 KLBJ here in town. The other doesn't want to be on air, who took the flu shot 3 years ago, and their hands and feet went numb. Two people that don't even know each other. They both went to their doctor and was told, you've got mild Guillain-Barré neurological. We're seeing a lot of it with this shot. So we know about 2% of adverse reactions get reported. You're talking about the really Guillain, the hardcore. But narcolepsy. I know 3 people who got narcolepsy within a month of taking some of these modern shots. And we've talked to Dr. Blaylock, also a medical doctor, brain surgeon, as you know. He's saying it's causing a autoimmune inflammation in the brain. And again, you have the studies for decades of 3 flu shots over your life, a doubling in chances of Alzheimer's. I mean, look, we knew when they approved Prozac in 81, it was increasing suicides in the trials. In 91. Now you see the lawyer ads all over TV. They're losing cases with serotonin reuptake inhibitors because the whole time they knew it was doing this. They knew placebo was better for depression. They knew it actually increased it. This is not just about money making. Bayer knowingly shipping out AIDS-tainted blood. This is some type of death cult depopulation agenda. And I covered their documents earlier. I'm sorry I'm ranting, but you've got the floor. Just break it down.
Well, I can't break it down any further than what you just did, and did an excellent job of that, because each one of those elements is a particular truth. How could they be so negligent? They can't. They can't be that negligent. It has to have an element of intent. And I believe that what we're looking at now, I mean, there was a report that came out, I believe it was yesterday, that says that now autism is 1 in every 110 children. And Alex, I think this is a really important point I want to make to all of your many listeners. For all of you out there that are trying to eat organic, bring up your kids non-vaccinated, and to have them do the best that you possibly can to keep them healthy, this is the world that your children are going to inherit. You parents that are doing a great job of educating yourself and not vaccinating your kids and not giving them drugs and feeding organic and getting them exercise and plenty of vitamin D and all of those good health things, your children are inheriting a world of 1 in 10 of the people around them have autism. They're not going to be able to have a job. Many of them can't speak. Many of them, by the time they get to be teenagers and even adults, will not be potty trained. Where is the money going to come from to handle that? Where is it? So we can never stop trying to educate parents against the horrors and the potential problems that are associated with vaccines. We just can't ever stop doing it, Alex, ever.
Well, you're right. In my life, 20 years has gone by like that. 35 years has gone by like that. 37 years. It seems like yesterday I was a little child. And now I see my children rocketing up, shooting up like little weeds. And I see it. I mean, I go to stores. I see children. And when I go to a homeschool event with a couple hundred homeschoolers, their eyes have that old sparkle, like old, black and white films. They're awake. They're smart. I go to a public school event. I go to restaurants, even in nicer areas of town. The children look like neurological zombies. I mean, most of them, they are killing us. And we try to eat almost completely organic with our children, except we're on the road. And I'm trying to tell my wife, and she's telling me we've got to work together to make sure we protect them, because even if we're going to sometimes be lazy and hurt ourselves, we can't do it. And they have the Big Cornucopia Foundation, as you know, came out 2 weeks ago, studied hundreds of cereal makers, just cereal, and found that Kraft and all these big companies have all these other front companies, and it's even more GMO, and then they're saying it's not, and certifying it and calling it natural, and it's in Whole Foods, it's everywhere. And then these same companies have seed vaults and now arc vaults with the DNA of all the animals. They know what they're doing. I mean, I did a video today that's posted at Infowars.com titled Alien Genetic Takeover, the End of Humanity. And I explained it isn't aliens from a trillion miles away. It is alien in the development of this planet. You're a doctor. Please speak to this. Give us your view. To splice animal, plant, DNA, sometimes stack 100 different species of 5 or 6 different families together. And then in all the GMO trials in 3 generations, totally sterile guinea pigs, you know, all of this stuff, addled, autistic type, you know, things. I mean, all the studies are there. And when you realize that an alien from a trillion miles away couldn't come to this planet and really wreck things more than these biotech, big pharma are doing, and then you find out they're doing it on purpose. I mean, it is unbelievable. Speak to that.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that part of it starts in medical school. I mean, I was just talking to a patient of mine here in the office today, and I was saying that I really believe that when doctors go through medical school now, they go through, you know, they get into their 3rd and 4th years of training. It's all algorithm driven. If not this, then that. Meaning if you have this symptom, you get this test, and if it's positive, you do this. If it's negative, you do this. And it's all algorithm driven. And it's all absolutely as if every single human were a machine that you have to run them through the exact same way. And I believe when you talk about aliens, you know, it's like the only thing that makes sense sometimes is who's inhabiting the brains of the people who are making these decisions? Who's inhabiting the brains of these doctors who can't even begin to connect the dots? Who will kick parents out of their practice who don't want to vaccinate, and will absolutely militantly say you've got to vaccinate, use every vaccine all the time. You know why? Because they're going to get their quarterly bonuses off of it. Whatever happened to the fact we talk about them, they, as if they are, you know, over there and they don't have anything to do with us, but they're humans. They're human beings. It's neighbors doing this to neighbors. It's humans doing it to humans for the sake of what? Money, commerce, profit. Why is it that we're doing this to each other? I mean, it's really a scary thing. We can talk about the people at the very top, the Bilderbergers and the people who make the decisions, but there's millions of people downstream from that who are the actual instrumentations of administering the vaccines and are writing out the prescriptions for the drugs.
Well, you know, for thousands of years in every culture, they've described political awakenings and revolutions as the public woke up. And now in the 21st century and the 20th century, the second half of it, televisions, it takes about 45 minutes with the average adult or child. But once you've learned how to suspend disbelief and go into the hypnotized state, you know, a lower brainwave state, it's a fact. They taught this when I was going to RTF. Then it takes about a minute to switch into it. That's that mind-numbed thing where if I do let my kids watch TV, I can't even shake them out of it. That's why we don't let them watch much of it. And I've talked to sociologists and people, they point out 50 years ago, you'd go around in New York or any other city or town, people were in the street talking, doing things. Parks were always full. Now they're empty, and you look at the high rises of the neighborhoods, it's glowing blue inside as they watch their televisions. So literally, the public is in a trance, and they're always given a cover story. Well, this is why we do this, and the social engineers know exactly what they're doing, and the robber barons made a decision about 130 years ago, and we've shown all the documents in my film Endgame, to set up a world government, start shutting off resources, develop technologies to control populations and reduce population. And they really believe they're doing the right thing. I ran into an animal rights lady when I was on the road. She didn't know who I was. I was talking to her, and she was saying, I think not only should we basically make people get rid of their animals because it's bad for the earth and everything, and you know, but we should also make everybody take an implantation so they can't have kids. I said, tell me more. And she told me about the foundations she works with and the government and how. And sure, if you're looking at all the unwashed masses and everything, and you're thinking that this water park's too crowded or people have too many tattoos or whatever, you know, it's this elitist attitude. But I always tell them, even if you think you're an elitist, did you get the memo about fluoride in the water? Did you get the memo about mercury in the vaccines? Did you get the memo about GMO? And she's like, no. Well, is it bad for me? And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to be the only, you're not going to be sitting up there, honey, running the levers, doing all this, okay? Because it kind of makes you feel like you're on a power trip or something. This is already being done, okay? And then it gets, and I have you on as a guest, but when I get into this subject, it's one of the areas I have a lot of knowledge, so I want to, to tell the audience what's happening. But just to be brief, and I want your comment on this, and your lengthy comment on it, Doc, because we're running out of time, and I don't want to dominate here, but let's say the Earth's too overpopulated, as the UN is saying right now. It's 7 billion, and it's going to, double by the end of the next century. Their own actuaries say it's going to plane off at 8.5 billion by 2025, and that's private groups have shown that too. Do they understand that the Royal Commission and the CIA Memorandum 200 from 49 and then 73, this is declassified, said if we industrialize the third world, they wouldn't have all these kids. But instead, we're going to let them have all these kids while shutting off their resources so they don't develop. So they actually let everybody have kids, get up to this giant number. And then now we're going to try to soft kill their fertility. I mean, it's really not even a plan by these people. It's more like they like to watch the world burn. Now, what's your view on that?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, Alex. I don't know that I have a specific view on that, other than to say that, most parents want to do the right thing for their kids. And what you talked about being in a trance from watching a television, it's pretty easy to put people in a trance. The hard part is to try to wake them up. And I think that we're kind of at a race to the finish line. Are we going to race to the point where we get enough people out there, not only in the U.S. and Canada, but all around the world, that are going to wake up and say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not taking it anymore, I'm not taking your vaccines or your drugs, I'm not doing any of that stuff? Or and we're going to have them wake up and take responsibility instead of abdicating their responsibility to another human standing across the room that happens to be in a white coat? Or are the globalists and the elite people going to win out, and they're going to get enough of us dumbed down by the fluoride in the water and the Prozac in the water and the GMO foods and the infertility things? I mean, it feels like we're in this race to the finish line. That can we get enough people awake and alert to fight back against a handful of people that seems to be hiding behind the curtains, pulling the levers?
Clearly, the middle level intelligentsia has woken up. Are you starting to see that?
Oh, absolutely. And I believe that there is a big push. We are absolutely taking the foundational rock out from underneath the entire pharmaceutical industry. I mean, I have said for a long time, Alex, you and I have had these conversations, and I know you say the same thing, that the vaccine industry is the bedrock of the pharmaceutical industry. If the pharmaceutical industry's vision statement, or so I understand it, is that every human on the planet, every man, woman, and child will be on a minimum of 1, preferably 2, daily prescription medications every day for life. What better way to make that a reality than to start with children and giving them the hepatitis B vaccine and the vitamin K vaccine at birth, and then giving them a series of 40 doses of 16 different vaccines by the time those little bodies are 5 years of age. And there's more and more coming down the pike every single year. There are 330 vaccines in the pipeline right now, and many of them are headed towards adolescence. So for many of your listeners who think, well, I really don't have to make those decisions because my kids are older, guess again. You're going to have to make the decision for adolescents. There are dozens of vaccines headed towards adults. And then someday, hopefully, if you're lucky, you'll have grandchildren. I had somebody post on my Facebook page the other day. It was really good. They said, well, just imagine this, that now when your kids are old enough to get married, you're going to say things like, oh, religion, okay, are they going to be a good companion? Are they on the same economic wavelength? What about education? Oh, is the person that you're dating, have they been vaccinated before? They have? Oh, sorry, I don't want my grandchildren to have all those vaccines in them. We worked very hard to raise you to be an unvaccinated person. And we know that genetically that those vaccines pass down by generations. And so we've created a mess here. We've created a mess. And I think that people need to wake up, more and more need to wake up, get participatory. Your children are inheriting a highly vaccinated population that they are going to have to work to support as they get older. And you need to keep telling all of your friends, family members, and neighbors to stop this travesty. More vaccines are not better. It's a 200-year mistake, and it's not too late to stop.
Well, you're right. It's been going on for more than 200 years, and it's really back to the days of alchemy and extremely dangerous. In fact, there's so many articles coming out. I saw a mainstream article admitting that the people that get measles shots, and I've seen a lot of these, but this was conclusive. I don't have it in the stack, but you may have seen it just like a week ago or so, that people that are getting the measles shot are actually getting the measles at a massively increased level than the general population. Doc, what about the numbers that we've seen in so many cases where the vaccine itself is giving the people of the disease or the problem. I mean, I've seen it in the news every year where the UN gives people polio vaccines, and it gives it to them and kills them. What's happening there?
Well, we still know, and we've known for a very long time, that as we continue to use the oral polio vaccine in third world countries where they have poor sanitation and poor hygiene, we give these kids these oral polio drops that go underneath their tongue, that go into their stool, that goes out into the water, that goes downstream to the next person who drinks out of the water. They get exposed, and then they contract paralysis, and the paralysis that we have come to call polio. We know that I just read a report yesterday about the shingles vaccine, that they're now saying that if adults get the shingle vaccine, and we know that there's going to be kids that are going to get the chickenpox vaccine, they're going to have side effects from it. But if the adults have had the chickenpox or the shingles vaccine, perhaps they can mitigate the side effects from the chickenpox vaccine given to kids. So now we're doing this whole messy thing of vaccinating people to protect other people. We are now creating vaccines because to protect against problems we've caused by vaccines. It is the bedrock of the pharmaceutical industry, Alex. If we pull it out, everything comes down like a house of cards. Why do you think it is that the CDC to this day refuses to do the vaccinated versus unvaccinated kids study? Someday, somewhere, somebody's going to raise enough money independently to do that study on their own. I don't think it's going to take more than maybe a couple $1 million, and we can have it done with an IRB and done through an educational institution, and we can show unequivocally that what you were talking about earlier about going to daycare or going to schools where the kids are unvaccinated, and you look at how healthy they are and how they're bright and inquisitive and they've got good functioning minds versus the dumbed down kids that have no brain power and they look like they've got fog over their eyes and they just can't think, and it's because they've got brain inflammation going on. If we had an epidemic of children that were going blind, that 1 in 110 kids were now blind, instead of figuring out how to have more seeing eye dogs and how to teach more of these kids Braille, we would be having a absolute runaway campaign to raise money to stop this blindness and figure out why these kids were going blind. But we have an entire generation, an epidemic of kids losing their minds, and we just go, oh well, maybe they need an iPad. And if we have autistic kids using an iPad, maybe they can learn to communicate, rather than looking at what the underlying cause is. It's an absolute travesty.
Well, you know what's behind that. The establishment, and I saw this years ago, and then actually covered in think tank documents going back to Edward Bernays. They talked about this. They said, if we're doing something that's making the public angry, and there's some epidemic or some social ill, we'll just go form groups to lead the opposition. And it's like the pink campaign. My wife always talks about this. Everybody is, I mean, it's up several thousand%. We're the #1 country in the world for breast cancer. It's epidemic. Young women are getting it. And there's never a discussion about what is causing skyrocketing breast cancer. It's always, let's find a cure for breast cancer, which is more radiation, more chemicals, chemo, more cutting. And it's just amazing. I mean, take my grandmother. She got breast cancer like 6 years ago. And they went in. She said, no, you're going to take out the tumor, and that's it, and I'll just die if that's the case. And then they got all angry. She went and got a couple more doctors. They found a doctor that would just take it out, and she's fine. She went and did her own research, found out the type she had was so slow growing. She goes back 6 years later. Oh, there's a little bit there now. It'll take probably 10 years to kill you. She said, hey, I'm almost 90 years old, okay? The great thing is she's still got her mind. And she's a great grandmother to my children. But the average person, some 30-year-old gets it, and they just go in there and chop both their breasts off. I mean, I know women who are getting their other breast chopped off because they had it in one breast. They're telling them, we just better chop both off right now. I mean, it's so horrible having my wife, my daughters, my mother, all these women I love, and just seeing this happen to them, and men die, and boys, all these other cancers. And they won't ever ask, why is it skyrocketing? No, that's the question you don't ask, because these lobbies want to keep it going forever. They'll just get more power when all the women have breast cancer. And that's what I think you got at. That's the motive here, is that while they're killing us slowly, they can suck everything out of us and have big galas with politicians up there who are eugenicists laughing. I mean, it is such a sick plan. Closing comments on that.
What are we going to do to change it? How are we going to get people involved? What is it going to take to get people out of their chairs and on the phone, on their computers? How much courage can we give people? How can we define what we want and get a burning, passionate desire to go after it, which means that we need to take back responsibility for our health. And those people who stand up there and laugh about these things, they need to be done away with. And that, that means vote them out of office, get somebody else in. I admit I'm a big Ron Paul fan, and I believe that all the things that he does are really great. I believe that we need to be supportive of the local people that really want to make a difference. I think we need to be courageous and not worry about bringing up the vaccine issue and whether or not our best friend gets angry with us. We're here about saving the planet and what's left of the human race. And I think courage is the most important thing that we can do.
That's right. I mean, this is about, for viewers out there, I'm going to look right at the camera, this is about getting out of your comfort zone. When this whole society stays in its little bubble and the system wants to make that bubble smaller and smaller and smaller, that's control. And my instincts, unfortunately, have always been right. I knew 9 years ago with the Model States Health Emergency Powers Act, when they openly tried to, and this is what we will close with, it's just so important. I knew with the Model Health States Emergency Powers Act, when they openly tried to get all the police and people to take the shots for smallpox and then anthrax so they could, quote, make us do it, admitted, they did this right from 9/11. We were all in fear. The government launched the anthrax attack. That's come out. To have forced inoculation, the police were smart enough to say no. Only 4% out of 100 agreed of the, quote, enforcers. So now I knew with the TSA, it's about them getting their hands on us, them training us. I knew they'd be on the highways. Now they are. And now I've seen articles admitting during biological outbreaks, the TSA will run checkpoints and will make sure that you either take the shot or go to quarantine. So this is going to be their cover, more than even stage terror. And I'm telling you, it's coming. All the movies, all the preparation. I've told you what's coming before it happened because I've got a survival instinct, folks, just like you do if you turn it on. And it's time to get out of the comfort zone because these people aren't playing games. And I'm telling you, this whole Homeland Security grid is nothing but a cleanup crew for billions of dead people. And I'm telling you, it's coming. And they're checkmated right now because they can't launch this right now because their own enforcers and people have heard the truth and are going to ask questions when all this unfolds. You think Hitler was bad, folks? You ain't seen nothing yet from these eugenicists. And I'm warning you right now, you better get your thinking cap on and your game face on and decide, like the doctor just said, which side are you on? Which side are you on, people that work for Big Pharma and others? It's time for whistleblowers. It's time to stand out. It's time to hit the streets. It's time to call into talk radio. It's called to get angry. When that school lies and tells you it's the law, your kid's got to take a shot, you should get angry by the fact that they're consciously defrauding you and lying to you that it's the law to take the shot. Doc, this whole program to get us used to them putting their hands on us, federally funded blood draws now at checkpoints for DUI, they're now admitting that's segueing us to forced inoculation.
Well, what else can you say, Alex? It's just people have got to, you've got to decide which, are you going to go along with the crowd? Are you probably going to end up mass inoculated? Maybe who knows what else? I mean, if they're doing forced blood draws, that means that they've got DNA samples of you anywhere. And at the least invasive of that would be that they could look at your DNA and say, oh, this person's at risk for getting MS down the road. Or
they've been taking blood for 39 years at birth in every industrialized country in a world program. I got secret documents 16 years ago. People didn't believe it. Now for 4 years, Doc, it's admitted. What else don't we know about? What else are these creepy eugenicists doing?
Exactly.
Well, give us your websites. Tell us how people out there who may be skeptical but now understand it's their duty to check. Let's just say we're crazy, we're wrong, though we've been proven right hundreds of times over and over again. Let's just say we're wrong. People still have a small chance it could be true. Of course, it's absolutely true and then some. But they at least have a responsibility to go check out the facts.
They do. You do need to have a responsibility to look at the other side and to understand that there are two sides here. And one is, it's a big decision for a lot of people, Alex. And so if you want more information, I would really hope that you'll come to my website, which is drtenpenny.com, D-R-T-E-N like Nancy, P like Paul, E-N-N-Y, drtenpenny.com. There's DVDs there, there's books there, there's free material. I would hope that you would look at our flu DVD. I know That's also available through InfoWars, because there's so much information there that we've done all the work. The work's already done for you. So all you have to do is just to sit down and look at 12,000 hours worth of information that's been boiled down into maybe 4 or 5 hours, and get yourself educated and stand up and say, I now know that there's another side. I know what's going to happen, and I'm not going to let this happen to myself and my family. I'm not. I'm taking a stand. I'm standing up and being courageous, and I'm going to walk across the field, and I'm going to go over there and stand with the people who are refusing to let this happen to myself and my family.
Well, you've just done incredible work, and your dedication is paying off. You're another testament, Dr. Tenpenny, to what we can all do by stepping up and doing whatever we can in our area. Duty is ours. Consequence belongs to God. People say, well, we can't win. It's too big. Whatever. We got in this position by believing we can't win. We will win. We will defeat this tyranny. God bless you, and thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Alex.